सब्सक्राइब करिए और बेल बटन दबाकर डीप नॉलेज की वीडियोस सबसे पहले पाइए।
Hello friends, today we are going to read a chapter from the book called Beyond the Pathless by Nandini Patnaik. This is a book which contains anecdotes from the life of J. Krishnamurti, and we are reading one of the chapters of this book, and the title of the chapter is The Wake of the Other. The cottage in which Krishnamurti and Nitya resided at Ojai was called the Pine Cottage. It was a laid-back two-bedroom unit with a large lounge, a fireplace, a compact kitchen with dining, bathroom and a porch in the front. The windows of the bedrooms opened to the vast rolling hills with miles upon miles of pure nature. A narrow stone paved path ran from the front of the house to the road, and there were no fences or gates around to demarcate the property. As one walked along the path, a few meters away was a young pepper tree that stood shading a part of the path. The path merged in a concrete road that went winding up and down the valley with orange and apricot orchards on both sides. The serene quiet of the valley had awakened a strange holiness about the place, and the pine cottage was wrapped in it. After Rosalind came to live nearby, pressure had been off Krishnamurti to some extent. He was still much attached to Nitya and wanted to do as much as he could for him. Yet at the same time, now he could spare some time for himself. Krishnamurti had been doing his meditations as taught to him by Leadbeater ever since his joining the Theosophical Society, a 30-minute schedule in the morning and a 10-minute schedule in the evening. Despite the physical stress and worry because of Nitya's illness, he had composed himself and his mind was in a state of deep tranquility. He felt he was able to focus on the image of the Lord Maitreya and Master Kuthumi in meditation more intensely, and he was happy that he was not diverted from his goal. A profound calm had descended upon him inwardly. Unknown to anybody around, a tremendous awakening awaited him, following which his whole life was going to be topsy-turvy. The incident would impact the life stream of mankind too. It was the 17th of August 1922. What took place starting that summer day was directly witnessed by 4 people who happened to be there: Nitya, Rosalind, Mr. Warrington and another gentleman, Mr. Walton, who also lived in the valley. The first day was just the beginning. Because of the importance of the occurrence, I would not like to rephrase it in my own words, but to present verbatim the way Nitya and Krishnamurti themselves described it. First is a chronological description written by Nitya in a letter to Annie Besant that, when written, Nitya was clueless as to what was happening and wanted to hear from Annie Besant or Leadbeater, whom he thought would know instantly. Nitya's account follows. On the evening of Thursday, the 17th, Krishna felt a little tired and restless, and we noticed in the middle of the nape of his neck a painful lump of what seemed to be a contracted muscle, about the size of a large marble. The next morning, he seemed all right until after breakfast, when he laid down to rest. Rosalind and I were sitting outside, and Mr. Warrington and Krishna were inside. Rosalind went in at Mr. Warrington's call and found Krishna apparently very ill, for he was lying on the bed, tossing about and moaning as if he were in great pain. She went and sat with him and tried to find out what was the matter with him, but Krishna could give no clear answer. He started again moaning, and a fit of trembling and shivering came upon him, and he would clench his teeth and grip his hands tight to ward off the shivering. It was exactly the behavior of a malarial patient except that Krishna complained of frightful heat. Rosalind would hold him quiet for a bit, and again would come the trembling and shivering as of ague. Then he would push her away, complaining of terrible heat and his eyes full of strange unconsciousness. And Rosalind would sit by him until he was quiet again, when she would hold his hands and soothe him like a mother does her young. Mr. Warrington sat at the other end of the room and realized. So he told me later that some process was going on in Krishna's body as a result of influences directed from planes other than physical. Poor Rosalind, who at first was very anxious, raised questioning eyes, and Mr. Warrington assured her that all would be well. But during the morning things got worse, and when I came and sat beside him, he complained again of the awful heat and said that all of us were full of nerves and made him tired. And every few minutes he would start up in bed and push us away, and again he would commence trembling. All this while he was only half conscious, for he would talk of Adyar and the people there as if they were present. Then again he would lie quiet for a little while until the ruffle of a curtain or the rattling of a window or the sound of a far-off blow in the field would rouse him again, and he would moan for silence and quiet. Persistently, every few minutes, he would push Rosalind away from him when he began to get hot, and again he would want her close to him. I sat near, but not too near. We tried our best to keep the house quiet and dark, but slight sounds which one scarcely notices are inevitable. Yet Krishna had become so sensitive that the faintest tinkling would set his nerves on edge. Later, as lunch came, he quietened down and became apparently all right and fully conscious. Rosalind took him his lunch, which he ate, and while we all finished our meal, he lay quiet. Then a few minutes afterwards, he was groaning again, and presently, poor fellow, he could not keep down the food he had eaten. And so it went on all the afternoon, shivering, groaning, restless, only half conscious, and all the time as if he were in pain. Curiously enough, when the time came for our meals, even though he ate nothing himself, he became tranquil, and Rosalind could leave him long enough to have her food. And at bedtime, he was quiet enough to sleep through the night. The next day, Saturday, it recommenced after his bath, only in a more acute form, and he seemed less conscious than the day before. All through the day it lasted, with regular intervals to give him a rest and allow Rosalind to have her food. But Sunday was the worst day, and Sunday we saw the glorious climax. All through the 3 days, all of us had tried to keep our minds and emotions unperturbed and peaceful, and Rosalind spent the 3 days by Krishna's side, ready when he wanted her and leaving him alone when he wished it. It was really beautiful to see her with him, to watch the way she could pour out her love unselfishly and absolutely impersonally. Even before all this happened, we had noticed this great characteristic in her, and though we wondered then if a woman should be nearby at that moment, yet the eventual happenings showed that probably she was specially brought here at that moment to help Krishna and indeed all of us. Though she is only 19 and knows little of theosophy, she played the part of a great mother through these 3 days. On Sunday, as I have said, Krishna seemed much worse. He seemed to be suffering a great deal. The trembling and the heat seemed intensified, and his consciousness became more and more intermittent. When he seemed to be in control of his body, he talked all the time of Adyar, AB, and the members of the Purple Order in Adyar. And he imagined himself constantly in Adyar. Then he would say, "I want to go to India. Why have they brought me here? I don't know where I am." And again and again and again he would say, "I don't know where I am." If anyone moved in the house, he nearly jumped off the bed, and every time we entered his room, we had to give him warning. Yet towards 6 o'clock, when we had our evening meal, he quietened down until we had finished. Then suddenly the whole house seemed full of a terrific force, and Krishna was as if possessed. He would have none of us near him, and began to complain bitterly of the dirt of the bed, the intolerable dirt of the house, the dirt of everyone around, and in a voice full of pain said that he longed to go to the woods. Now he was sobbing aloud. We dared not touch him and knew not what to do. He had left his bed and sat in a dark corner of the room on the floor, sobbing aloud that he wanted to go into the woods in India. Suddenly he announced his intention of going for a walk alone, but from this we managed to dissuade him, for we did not think that he was in any fit condition for nocturnal ambulations. Then, as he expressed a desire for solitude, we left him and gathered outside on the veranda, where in a few minutes he joined us, carrying a cushion in his hands and sitting as far away as possible from us. Enough strength and consciousness were vouchsafed him to come outside, but once there again he vanished from us, and his body, murmuring incoherencies, was left sitting there on the porch. We were a strange group on that veranda, Rosalind and I on chairs, Mr. Warrington and Mr. Walton opposite, facing us sitting on the bench, and Krishna to our right a few yards away. The sun had set an hour ago, and we sat facing the far-off hills, purple against the pale sky in the darkening twilight, speaking little, and the feeling came upon us of an impending climax. All our thoughts and emotions were tense with a strangely peaceful expectation of some great event. Then Mr. Warrington had a heaven-sent inspiration. And in front of the house, a few yards away, stands a young pepper tree with delicate leaves of a tender green, now heavy with scented blossoms, and all day it is the murmurous haunt of bees, little canaries, and bright hummingbirds. He gently urged Krishna to go out under that tree, and at first Krishna would not, then went of his own accord. Now we were in a starlit darkness, and Krishna sat under a roof of delicate leaves, black against the sky. He was still murmuring unconsciously, but presently there came a sigh of relief, and he called out to us, "Oh, why didn't you send me out here before?" Then came a brief silence, and now he began to chant. Nothing had passed his lips for nearly 3 days, and his body was utterly exhausted with the intense strain, and it was a quiet, weary voice we heard chanting the mantram sung every night at Adyar in the shrine room. Then silence. Long ago in Taormina, as Krishna had looked with meditative eyes upon a beautiful painting of our Lord Gautama in mendicant garb, we had felt for a blissful moment the divine presence of the Great One, who had deigned to send a thought. And again this night, as Krishna, under the young pepper tree, finished his song of adoration, I thought of the Tathagata, the Buddha, under the bo tree, and again I felt the peaceful valley, a wave of that splendor, as if again he had sent a blessing upon Krishna. We sat with eyes fixed upon the tree, wondering if all was well, for now there was perfect silence, and as we looked, I saw suddenly for a moment a great star shining above the tree, and I knew that Krishna's body was being prepared for the Great One. I leaned across and told Mr. Warrington of the star. The place seemed to be filled with a great presence, and a great longing came upon me to go on my knees and adore, for I knew that the great Lord of all our hearts had come himself, and though we saw him not, yet all felt the splendor of his presence. Then the eyes of Rosalind were opened, and she saw. Her face changed as I have seen no face change, for she was blessed enough to see with physical eyes the glories of that night. Her face was transfigured as she said to us, "Do you see him? Do you see him?" For she saw the divine Bodhisattva, the Lord Maitreya, and millions wait for incarnations to catch such a glimpse of our Lord. But she had eyes of innocence and had served our Lord faithfully. And we who could not see saw the splendors of the night mirrored in her face, pale with rapture in the starlight. Never shall I forget the look on her face, for presently I, who could not see but who gloried in the presence of our Lord, felt that he turned towards us and spoke some words to Rosalind. Her face shone with divine ecstasy as she answered, I will, I will, and she spoke the words as if they were a promise given with splendid joy. Never shall I forget her face when I looked at her. Even I was almost blessed with vision. Her face showed the rapture of her heart, for the innermost part of her being was ablaze with his presence, but her eyes saw. And silently I prayed that he might accept me as a servant, and all our hearts were full of that prayer. In the distance we heard divine music softly played. All of us heard, though hidden from us were the Gandharvas, cosmic angels who make the music of the spheres. The radiance and the glory of the many beings present lasted nearly an half hour, and Rosalind, trembling and almost sobbing with joy, saw it all. Look, do you see? She would often repeat. Or do you hear the music? Then presently we heard Krishna's footsteps and saw his white figure coming up in the darkness, and all was over. And Rosalind cried out, Oh, he is coming, go get him, and fell back in her chair almost in a swoon. When she recovered at last, alas, she remembered nothing. Nothing, all was gone from her memory except the sound of music still in her ears. The next day again, there was a recurrence of the shuddering and half-waking consciousness in Krishna, though now it lasted but a few minutes and at long intervals. All day he lay under the tree in samadhi, and in the evening, as he sat in meditation as on the night before, Rosalind again saw 3 figures round him who quickly went away, taking Krishna with them, leaving his body under the tree. Since then, and every evening, he sits in meditation under the tree. I have described what I saw and heard, but of the effect of the incident upon all of us I have not spoken, for I think it will take time, at least for me to realize fully the glory that we were privileged to witness, though I feel now that life can only be spent in one way, in the service of the Lord. It was a first-hand description of some unique spiritual event that the occult books are unaware of. In the above account, simply Nitya narrated what he saw.
फ्रेंड्स, अगर आपको पसंद आया हो तो ये नीचे रेड कलर का सब्सक्राइब बटन है, आप उसको दबा देंगे और एक बेल बटन आता है ब्लैक कलर का, उसको प्रेस कर देंगे तो ये वीडियोस आपको फटाफट आपके अकाउंट में पहुंच जाएंगे। और हाँ, अगर आप डोनेट करते हैं तो ये वीडियोस हमेशा के लिए फ्री रहेंगे। थैंक यू सो मच।